because that driver, that doer, has got a positive intention behind it, but we just
Right.
don't know what it is. But really, it's an automatic reaction based on some fear or pain, or that's that survival mode thing, or that adaptation you learned early on. It's a strength, but when not in check, it becomes automatic and it's got a detriment to your overall health. Sounds
Ray
good.
Brejcha is a trusted executive coach and psychedelic guide with 20 plus years of experience helping high achievers evolve beyond performance into true leadership. A former Silicon Valley sales leader and two-time founder, Ray now works with CEOs, pro athletes, and entrepreneurs to bridge the gap between external success and internal fulfillment. His method blends executive coaching, internal family systems, and psychedelic integration to support breakthroughs in clarity, purpose, and emotional freedom. What sets Ray apart is his rare ability to navigate both boardrooms and inner landscapes, guiding clients through major reinventions with presence, precision, and humanity. Ray, once again, thanks for joining the podcast.
My pleasure. Good to be here.
Absolutely. So we already discussed this. We're gonna take this podcast down a bunch of different roads tonight, and I am super excited
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah.
But just to kick this thing off, you obviously went from Silicon Valley sales leader, entrepreneur to now helping people find themselves to basically become a better version of themselves. So can we kind
Mm-hmm.
of just dive into the journey from the beginning, maybe a little bit of an overview of the Silicon Valley days, and then proceed
Yeah.
accordingly into where you are now?
Yeah, there was this one moment when I was working for a firm called Gartner. They're a research and advisory firm. I was selling for them, and I had already reached a certain level of success in that capacity. I already had the house, the car, but internally I felt this disconnect. I call it now the silent void. That's the space between this external achievement and this internal fulfillment. And back then I would just call it like anxiety. But now it's like I call it discontent or absence of meaning. But it's that silent void that a lot of high performers I work with share with me. They've reached the level of success, whether it's a baseball player or the CEO that has 1,000 person life sciences company that's got houses in Hawaii, and but there's still like this deeper yearning for more. So I was in that same space, and I volunteered to be a crisis counselor on a hotline in San Francisco. If you go on the Golden Gate Bridge, there are these little blue phones. I think they're blue or white phones. And a lot of people have taken their lives by jumping off that bridge. So those phones patch into the center. So I saw an ad for it, and they trained you to be a crisis counselor. So you get trained on mental health. And in my family of origin, I had two people like lose their life to completing suicide. So it was in my family, and I it was near and dear to me. And so I saw this ad. I'm like, well, maybe I can understand why someone would do that. So I took 70 hours of training and learned the art of holding space for people in crisis. And I was doing that after work 1 day a week for seven, I think for two total of 2 years. And it was the first time there was like this deeper sense of like meaning that I didn't experience from just getting that next sale.
Right.
So I would hold space for people, and it wasn't about the magic that you said. I used to try to take it on and say, "Oh, if I have the right answer, say the right thing." No, it's about just listening, listening with compassion, and like the theme for your show, curiosity.
Right.
Listening with curiosity, asking questions, reflecting things back, and just holding space for someone in crisis. And I was like, oh my gosh, I've had it all wrong this time. So there was there's something clicked for me that giving helping others was actually more meaningful than just making money for me making money's sake. So that's the moment it clicked for me.
So jump from making probably really, really good money and obviously achieving great success in sales to then jumping over to working on a crisis hotline of sorts. Was there even in the back of your mind, were you thinking about money at all, or was it truly just trying to fill the void at the time?
Well, it was just I was trying different things. At that point, I read a book. It's called A Courage to Change, and I called the guy. Then he got me into group work, and I started doing like these men's circles with other entrepreneurs, like a men's mastermind group where we talked about purpose in our business and about how we relate with women. So 6 guys got together every week, 2 hours every 2 weeks, and we just rolled our sleeves up and said, "Where are you full of shit? Where are you not being real?"
Yep.
And we had like 6 mirrors in front of you. So I learned about how to be a man. These other guys. The universal theme is our dads growing up were all working. they were providing physically, but emotionally they weren't there guiding us on how to be a man. So we helped raise each other. So I was doing that. I was doing cognitive psychotherapy. I was doing group work, and yet still that thing persisted. That emptiness, that like thing that I would call anxiety, that still persisted. So that's what threw me into like this deep quest for answers, you know. So the hotline as a volunteer was that moment where it's like, oh, and then my deeper inquiry into myself and trying other modalities to get to know myself and trying to find out what that unease was inside of myself.
So, is there a good answer to the general question of like why do high achievers experience this silent void? Do you think you have a
Well,
specific, or is it just more? Is it more case by case for every single individual?
well, again, that's that silent void again. Just to recap that, it's that external achievement, having all the things you thought were success on the
Yep.
outside, and that inner fulfillment. You know, it's where you really feel this inner peace, and I call it emotional freedom. So it's like I'm not being run by circumstances, but that void happens when, despite all your success, you still feel dissatisfied. You
Yep.
still feel like you're running on survival. You're in survival mode. You're exhausted. You're lonely. You're frustrated. You're reactive. Some people feel like a fraud. Like, what if they find out? You know, so that's that void. And how it happens is, you know, a lot of leaders they get to where they are because they've had to. It wasn't by accident. They were high performing.
Right.
So they got here by overworking, overperforming, out adapting everyone else around them. You know, it's like that social Darwinism. But somewhere along the way, they became what the world needed rather than who they were actually are. And so that's that cost of like continually that hypervigilance, that scanning, like always being on, and then you get that split from yourself, and that's where that split happens, that void that happens because everything you become is somehow externally referenced. That's at least been my experience.
Got it. So you've come to the conclusion now, or you've worked on a number of different things to support yourself and finding your way, right? And like
Mm-hmm.
filling that void. How
Mm-hmm.
did you figure out that the use of psychedelics was one of the best ways to figure out how to fill that void?
Well, I think it's part and parcel. What I found is when I work with high achievers, you know, they're coming to me with a lot of what I would call self agency, and they're coming to me with they're growth oriented, they're very self aware,
Yeah.
and so they're either already on the path of I would call introspection or seeking deeper alignment beyond success, and they're also emotionally intelligent for the most part, and they've done some therapy. So they've tried things, and they haven't really kind of gotten there. And that's where I was. A classic example. Worked with this guy who had made millions by the time he's 24, then lost it all. Went to jail for a white collar crime. Got out, started making millions again. Lost. He kept doing the cycle of making money, losing money, make. And then we were doing a retreat together. And at one point, he's like, "Can I take this mask off? I have people wear masks to stay inward, or they call them a well, I'll just call it a mask for now." But
Yeah.
he took his mask off. He started smiling. He's like, "I hate myself," and I'm like, "Excuse me? Like, why, why are you smiling when you say you hate?" He's like, "It's the first time I've been honest with myself." And I asked the question, like, "When's the first time you started hating yourself?" He said, "Well, I've been doing therapy for 10 years, probably about 300 hours of therapy, and I just had this memory come online that I was bullied when I was in seventh grade." And so he started to see how being bullied led to him having this self sabotage where he made money, lost money. It was just self hatred.
Right.
He made that assessment himself. He said, "In 10 years of therapy, I never got there." He didn't, it was so repressed. And so that was my experience that psychedelics then became. I read this article, it was a National Geographic adventurer. And this is back in 2005. This is 20 years ago before they were talking about it mainstream. I couldn't even spell ayahuasca. But I was reading this article in National Geographic. It said shamanic therapy to hell and back. And I'm like, the article both scared me and also excited me. And it's like, I just had this call. I got to do this. And so I went to Peru and sat with these shamans in the Sacred Valley. And it was 3 retreats or 3 journeys in 8 days. And it forever changed my life. And back then, there was no integration, which is big now. Like, there was no, I just flew in, parachuted in, drank a bunch of medicine, and went back to my job. Like, there was no getting me back on the runway, landing me home. And so I learned the hard way for just trial and error, but now it's much different. There's a lot of integration. That's what I focus on. But that's what shifted because I did all that work and still there was something that I couldn't quite get to. And then during that retreat in Peru, I started experiencing myself and the whole world differently. Like you'll see things that you've never seen about yourself. You see yourself in the world. You'll make connections. It's hard to explain unless you've done it, but it just helps you see yourself more clearly without all the subconscious beliefs, the patterns, the rigid thought patterns, like this constant drive. You'll see yourself in your true nature and go, oh, I want more of that. And like you'll connect dots and go, oh, that's why I do what I do. Oh, I see where I'm holding back love from my kids or my wife. I'm being stingy with it. So you'll see like then it gives something for them to like really push towards and go, I want to experience that in my everyday life. The client I just got off the phone with, he was in tears several times today. He's like, I've never experienced myself so lighthearted in this way, so playful. And I can see how I've been performing my whole life, performing when I go on dates, performing when I'm in the boardroom. He's a founder of a company. He's like, my whole life is on performance and doing something. I was like the court gesture and I was the actor, the thespian. And I'm
Right.
like, what if I just was like myself? But the story was if I'm myself, then people won't care. I won't matter. So he saw that and now he can't unsee that. So in some ways you're kind of screwed because you can't unsee what you see in a journey. So that's how I arrived there. And my clients are no different. They've tried things and they still have that sense of something internally is just not fulfilling for
All right, real talk. Whether I'm gearing up for a tough workout or preparing for an episode of The Cameron Brown Show, I need to be locked in. And that's where A Bomb Energy comes in play. This stuff isn't just another energy drink. It was actually created by an Army Special Ops combat medic who wanted something better, something that actually helps you think clearer, focus longer, and retain information, not just give you a quick caffeine spike. And I can tell you, it really works. I've been drinking A Bomb before I hit the gym, and it's like flipping a switch. My focus is on point, my energy is steady, and I don't get that crash afterward. Same when I'm recording this podcast. I need to be sharp, engaged, and A Bomb helps me stay in the zone. Plus, it actually tastes great. So if you're looking for something that gives you a real mental and physical edge, go check them out at abombenergy.com. And when you order, just type Cameron in the notes so they know that I sent you. Trust me, you're going to feel the difference.
them.
So I've got a question I want to ask before my follow up to this is going to be, we're going to talk about IFS or internal family systems and just better
Mm-hmm.
understand what they are in general and then
Yep.
kind of go down that
Yep.
road. But before I go
Yep.
there, I've been thinking about this as it relates to therapists and support system. And you mentioned earlier like a group of 6 men that all got together and helped each other out. What do you
Mm-hmm.
think it is about yourself that has made you successful and gotten you to a point where you can actually genuinely help clients in the way that you do? Because it seems like it's been very impactful. And there are
Mm-hmm.
obviously a lot of therapists, there are a lot of coaches and mentors and other individuals out there doing a lot of different things to try to help people in whatever way they do.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think it is about you that makes you successful in your role?
Mm. It's a great question. There's so many levels to answering that. But my current answer to that question, from what clients tell me, is that uh, what they've appreciated about my process is that I start with education. Like anyone can sit for someone. Like you have a friend, you gobble some mushrooms and say, "Okay, sit for me." I'll put my eye mask on, a playlist on, and they're just going to sit there. Well, I sometimes just sit there, but what I do in advance of someone sitting with me, I have a 60-question assessment where I assess your readiness for this work. I've told people no, they're not ready for it. And that could be for several reasons. If they're looking for a quick fix, this is not your path. So, because I do this education process, it starts with learning you about your mental health, any kind of medications you're on, what was your family environment like, tell me about your mom, tell me about your dad, tell me about like all of these things and outcomes you want. And then I have no less than about 14 hours of educational content from people like Andrew Huberman, Rick Doblin, Dick Schwartz from IFS. What is neuroplasticity? Why should I care? All kinds of stuff on high achievers. What is subconscious programming? How does that show up in your leadership? So I educate people on what they can expect going into this altered state, which, by the way, you can get there with breath work and other means, but I just use psychedelics. So because I do all this education and this prep, by the time they get to me, they've been doing parts work journaling. We've had a couple hours of conversation. So when they go in, they come to sit with me. They've got like this, their invitations or intentions. They've got some mantras to anchor them in the journey. I've written a poem for them. and this inward journey invocation. I call it a prayer to themselves, like the hero's journey. They have all of that they read before they take the medicine, and then we go and ground on the earth and walk, walk the land for a bit before we start. Because they've done so much preparation, it brings down their fear center, and it opens them up to like, actually, this can help me. So they say that process of helping educate along the way helps them relax and feel more open to the potency of this path. And then the integration in the back end, there's an integration guide, there's practices, there's two calls in the back end. So because I do that really, so my 20 years of coaching,
Yeah.
I'm very much a stickler on the coaching frameworks to help this stick. I don't want just a quick fix, a one and done. I want someone to have a longer arc of integration for this work.
Right.
So that's one thing that, and I've done my deep work. Like I've heard some people, and I don't want to offend the people that are religious. I hope I don't, but someone told me once that spirituality is people who've been to hell and back, and religion is people who are afraid to go to hell. Like, again, not trying to insult religion, but for me, I've been to hell and back, and because I've gone to the depths of my own internal landscape, and I know how to hold space for people. I've been through the ringer, with my upbringing. There's this thing called the adverse childhood experience. The top score is a 10. I think I scored a 6. Most of my clients have scored 3. So I've had twice the amount of adverse childhood experiences that most of my clients have had, and I've made it out alive. I've
Yep.
I've come through that deep pain and grief and struggle. Not that I'm any more struggle than other people, but I've been through a lot of stuff, and I've had to heal and grow from that. And so I hold that space for people. So whoever you sit with, make sure they've done their work and they know how these potent. I've been working with these psychedelics for 20 years.
Right.
So it's not like I just had an epiphany in Tulum and then came back. I'm a guide. Like I just didn't go to Walmart and get my certification to be a, what I'm
Just
saying?
like
I've
you
been,
said, I was just curious if that was how it happened or not. So,
yeah, no, I went to Walmart. It was on aisle 16 by the motor oil. I was like, I got this, you know? Yeah,
no,
it's
I
funny.
also like our first phone conversation. I immediately was like, okay, I connect with Ray. Ray's a super nice guy. He's listening to me. He understands. He's authentic. That was my initial reaction. And I think the other thing too is you sound like, well, it seems as though you are a really good listener, which I think is also really important. But also at the end of the day, too, you mentioned something about doing the work up front, but also being very honest with your clients. A lot of people in, well, sales, whatever you're doing, right? A lot of people aren't very honest with their clients up front, and it makes for a really bad experience for everybody. Not that this
Yeah,
really relates to this, but at the end of the day, it's if you are not completely honest with your client, if you're a good fit or not a good fit, it's probably not going
yeah,
to be good for anybody.
yeah, yeah. And I tell people sometimes it gets worse before it gets better.
No.
And what I mean by that, if you're someone who avoids feeling and you're a leader who's in your head all the time and the next strategy, the next framework, or I'm going to think my way out of this, you're going to start to feel a lot. And if you don't have the ability to stay with your nervous system and regulate and feel all these feelings, it may be really, really uncomfortable for you. So I always say it could get worse before it gets better because you're going to feel a lot more than you ever felt before. And you're going to see things more clearly and go, oh, this is my old pattern. This feels like crap. And you might spiral into shame more, but you have to a place to hold all that. So there's this thing called aftercare. And I've got this team of people that are therapists, clinicians, breathwork people. So depending
Yep.
on what the client's working with, it's not just me, but I've got a care team that I've vetted that can help them depending on what they're needing to do. So that, and you want to also make sure that they're taking the right dose, and the medication, the meds, or the I call them medications, or their medicines. You have the right dosing and you get it from a trusted source.
Yep.
That's also what makes this experience safe. And then also Michael Pollan talks about set and setting in his book, How to Change Your Mind. It's also on Netflix. The proper set, that's the mindset, the preparation. Are you in a good emotional state? Are you $100 from bankruptcy, your wife left you, your house burnt down, you can barely stay, on the road, or you're like in a good state, but you just want more. You want to optimize parts of yourself. So it's that state and the setting. You've got an eye mask, you've got an intentional playlist, you've got good medicine, you prepare with a guide, and you're in a good place and you're in a safe space to let go. And then I'm by your side. So set and setting is also an important part of the process.
I love it. A lot of this. So I'm going to hit on internal family systems first before we keep going. So can we just explain what that is first before we
Yeah.
then proceed?
Yeah. I mean, it's been around for 40 years. A guy named
Okay.
Dick Schwartz. He's a family systems guy, a systems thinker. So if you imagine like a kid, like imagine in your own family, if there's a kid that had developmental challenges or was acting out, like what do you do? Do you just treat the kid as having emotional outbursts or swearing in class or getting in fights? You don't just treat the kid like the problem. You got to look at the whole family system. Well, what's interesting? Oh, the dad drinks and then he cheated on the wife, and the kids got to see it all. So there's this chaos in the family, and the acting out kid's a symptom of the family chaos. So you have to treat it like a family. So Dick Schwartz said, guess what? Inside of us, there's this whole family system. So the notion is that we inside of ourselves have this. I tell executives like it's like an internal board meeting where you've got like a younger part of you that had some trauma to deal with. You've got like your higher self that can talk about in religion and spirituality, where this part of you is very creative, curious, courageous. It's like this part of you that's like never changes. And then along the way, you've got these parts which I've been told, like by Gabor Mate, they're called adaptations. Dick Schwartz calls them parts. It's basically, let's say that you're wanting to start a new business, you're going to buy this pool company. You're like, what's part of my portfolio? I want to expand. And then yet you keep procrastinating putting that proposal together. And then like you make excuses. You go doom scroll on Instagram. You're like, I want this, but there's something in the way.
Right.
Well, what happens in parts work is we get curious about that part that's procrastinating. And that's usually an adaptation that's protecting you from some fear, some imaginary fear happening, or some pain. Well, if you buy that pool company, they go under, you'll be broke and you'll be homeless. That's what you're, and so your nervous system like just reacts and throws that procrastinator in there. And guess what? You may have 8 or 10 parts all interacting. You're confident, but you're procrastinating, and you're also in fear and you get anxiety. So arts work is really like getting to know the internal landscape that show up, and then who's who in the zoo, and let's start dialoguing with them, almost like you would in a boardroom. So that's what parts is. It's like we're multidimensional beings, they're subpersonalities, and the goal is just to get in contact because if you're not, they're just running the show.
Right.
They started doing their work when you were younger. Let's say they're 8 years old. This people pleaser kicked in to make you in the club. If you're not aware of that, it just kicks in, it becomes automatic, and you're not even aware of it. You just think it's you. You're like, well, if you slow it down and go, why am I people pleasing? Oh, because I don't want to be alone. This is what I have to do to stay in contact with people. But it's not who you are anymore. It's an adaptation at 12 you did to stay in the group, to be loved, to be. So parts work is really like helping relieve those parts roles so you can be more of who you are without all these adaptations. Does that make sense?
It does, and
It's
you keep referencing art like youth, right? It's as though a lot of these issues occurred in people's youth that then are impacting them later on in life. Do you ever find though that it's not youth? It's something that maybe happened later on that is causing them these troubles, or is it typically something that happened in their childhood?
it's both actually. Like
Okay.
I wrote a paper. I'd be happy to give it to your guests too. It's trauma's impact on high achievers and trauma. Gabor Mate is a world leading authority on trauma. It's trauma is not the event. It's not like what happened to you. You got robbed at gunpoint. That's not the trauma. The trauma is what happens inside of you. It's that wound that gets created that if you don't address it, it
Right.
becomes disease, it becomes ADHD, anxiety, depression. So it's what happened inside of you with that trauma. So guess what? Those happen early on and they still happen as adults. Divorce is a trauma. I had a really good friend and client that lost his son in a boating accident, and his son was 19. That
Yep.
was 5 years ago. That pain is still so it traumas happen all throughout your life. I just call them life traumas. No one gets out unscathed. And then on top of that, this guy named Bruce Lipton, who's in quantum physics, a scientist, he did his first psychedelic journey like 5, 6 years ago. And he now talks about this notion of uh, we have these subconscious patterns that happen up to the age of 7 years old. You just adopt the programming of your parents. You just see the world through their eyes and you adopt that software program. And then school has a program for you. And then, oh, if you get sick, go see the doctor. That's a program. You may belong to a church or some club. You adopt all these programs up to age 7.
Right.
And then guess what? You're on autopilot. Then you become older, you're an executive, a leader, and 95% of your time is in your brain, your thinking mind. Well, if you're not aware of these subconscious programs, you think they're you, and then you're not you at all. You're just being run by programs. So up to age 7, you're all those programs have been installed. So this work is about reinstalling the operating system
Okay.
so that you get to emerge from those programs. That's the other part of it. So it's life traumas and the subconscious program that happens up to like age 7. That's what the research bears out.
Does this work really, really well for co-owners in a business as well? Do you ever work with, or is it just individuals you're working with right now?
Oh no, I've done coaching with co-founders so I can
Yep.
get better alignment, but I've had, I'm working with one guy now who might have his entire leadership team come to do this work together. You know, I've had EO Group, which is entrepreneurs organization. They meet as a group of non-related CEOs, and they're going to come do some work with me with their group to take it deeper so that they can support each other. They become family and they're wanting to clear the clutter to get real support from each other. They open up and bare their souls to these other people in the room,
Yep.
and they want to go deeper together. So it certainly can be used. And I think one of the best ways to integrate this work is through relational work, like
Right.
in groups. You
Right.
know,
And I'm just thinking too, like through myself with co-founders and other owners and people I've partnered with before too. Work like this and going deep into this would be incredibly beneficial to be done on the front end. Not wait
mhm.
till things get bad, but to do it on the front end to better understand who you're actually getting into bed with, into business with,
Yeah,
truly,
yeah,
and to really know those things up front. I think it might be difficult to get certain people to agree to do it because they might be like,
yeah,
I don't know if we really need to do that. So
yeah.
that is a kind of a follow up question too with those individuals that are maybe a little more hesitant about the work and our leadership, our CEOs, like I want all my leadership team to get involved in this. Have you had any pushback on any of that?
Yeah, there's been some leaders that I've worked with as an executive coach for a year, and we were working on how to scale, how to build high performance teams, how to have OKRs in place, all the kind of leadership 101 stuff, and how to have difficult conversations, how to hire and fire. And we didn't do psychedelic work until a year into that engagement. And what
Yeah.
happened for him is on Christmas Eve, his father took his life. He's like, I don't need leadership. I don't need more frameworks. I'm just falling apart and I can't make sense of like, that was my best friend and now he's gone. And like, what do I do? So he flew me to his place and I sat with him and his wife and he took a leave of absence from the company just to make sense of this new world he's in now with his father, who was his mentor and guide. His father was an entrepreneur and taught him the art of entrepreneurship.
Right.
But that was a year of work together, just coaching. So sometimes I start to do deep coaching engagements where we do a 360, we do stakeholder centered leadership alignment, where every month I pull the people that are consumers of that leadership and get feedback. And then 6 months in, they may do a journey. Some come for the journey first, so I meet them where they are,
Right.
really. Some come into group retreats first, which I host. It's just depending on what they're looking for. Everyone's different. So I just start with a conversation like this, 45 minutes, get a sense of where they are, what they're wanting. And then I've got multiple ways I can interact with people, and including non-psych. I've done plenty of coaching work about psychedelics. It's not
Right.
for everyone. It's not a panacea. It's not a quick fix. Some people are like, I don't want to lose my edge. If I become more aware, that my dysfunction is my edge. I had one entrepreneur say, like, I don't want to lose my edge. I'm successful. If I get all touchy feely and grow and heal,
Yeah.
I may not be successful. And that's a fear that comes up. So I just meet them where they are.
That was actually my next question was literally that of I feel like there's a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of founders, a lot of business people that are nervous about losing that edge and also nervous about being as aggressive because there's like an aggressive side of this too in business, right? If you're not as aggressive or not as fast paced or not as hardcore, hard charging, you're gonna lose that edge and you're not gonna perform like you used to before. Um, I I can kind of see that to a certain degree, but I guess I'd be interested to know what your response is to that because they also need to be attached to their emotions and understanding of their emotions and in touch with themselves. So how do you maybe help them to get over that fear?
Well, it's just from experience. Like in those last 2 years alone, I've probably sat with 70 people,
Yep.
whether it's a group setting or mostly one on one. And universally, I've not seen anyone go down, fall off you know, like if anything, they've had to go through training. They did some work, and all of a sudden the board removes them for the company they built 16 years ago, or the Major League Baseball player who is sacrificing his body for performance realized, like, oh, like my body is not like meant for destruction. Like
Right.
I need to sustain and so the team laid him off, and he had to make peace with him reconciling what's next for my career. So oftentimes it's not about losing your edge. It's about becoming more of who you really are and making it more sustainable because there is a cost to that like success paradox. The
Right.
cost is isolation, fatigue, burnout, depression. A lot of founders research is like 40% of founders, startup founders, have some form of mental health challenge, whether it's subject. So there's a cost to like doing it that way, to keeping your edge is a cost. And
Yep.
then usually you start peeling it back. Oh, my wife's leaving me. Oh, my kids hate me. Oh, there's co-founder conflict. Oh, we're running out of money. So it's not working anyway, you know? So what I try to tell them is that based on my experience, you become more of who you are, and it's actually you become more peaceful inside.
Right.
And you get to make decisions from a more grounded place versus a reactionary place or an automatic place. You get to be more grounded in your leadership and make better decisions because you have more agency.
So I'm assuming during that first portion, that first meeting, even probably during first sessions, you are truly helping them to define. I talk about defining success oftentimes too. It's like, what does success really mean to you right now? Because if your marriage is ruined, you probably want your marriage to be better. Is that a goal of yours, or is that not a goal of yours? So is there like a conversation to what do you want to get out of this as well, or are you basically saying this is what you're going to get out of this as a result of going through my training?
No, it's all individual. It's
Okay.
all individual. Like I ask very curated questions in the
Yeah.
right order that helps them get to like instead of saying what are my intentions for the journey, I say invitations. Intentions are like very structured agenda based,
Yeah.
but what do you want to get from this thing? It's unique to everyone individually.
Yeah.
It's what do they want to get, and it's been all over the map. There hasn't been one that's but a lot of them tell me they want to have more inner peace and feel more connected to the people in their lives and not be so exhausted from chasing success. Like that's pretty universal,
Yeah.
but it's different for everyone. I ask those questions and then we hop on a 90-minute call to prepare for the journey.
Yeah.
Then I get really curious for those questions. I further unpack them. So the time they sit with me, they get that document for them that's their unique journey,
I love
their
it.
poem, their inward journey prayer, their intentions. It's all for them uniquely.
And you've kind of already answered this to a certain degree, but as it relates to understanding or what is maybe misunderstood about high performers, can we kind of dive into that a little bit? What's maybe the most misunderstood thing about these high performers you're working with?
Yeah, people assume that they're confident and invulnerable, but many are running these old survival programs, hypervigilance, uh, performance-based leadership. They've got imposter syndrome, so they're over-indexing on that.
Yep.
They're not being real in their interactions. They're managing and controlling versus relating. So people just think that they've got it all figured out. They've all the answers, but you start talking to them. Guess what? They're lonely. They're isolated. You get this, and you're like the buck
Yep.
stops with you. And who do you talk to about? Not your wife. Not people that never done this. So really, like if you peel it back, these leaders are very vulnerable. They're very overwhelmed. They're very overloaded. They have no one to talk about it. So they are vulnerable to all these things in their system, and they feel very alone in that because no one really gets the pressure of starting a business or being an entrepreneur or running 1,000-person life sciences company. That
Right.
pressure is immense.
Right.
Even for a solopreneur, it's scary.
Yeah.
It's confronting. There's cash flow. There's employees. It's a math problem. So that's what people assume is that they've got it all figured out, and they don't. I had a client that said, after his exit from his company, he felt more anxious than ever. You think like, well, isn't nirvana to exit your company? Well, you think so, but then he felt more anxious than ever. So he was trying to prove himself, even though he was still trying to prove, even though he hit his outcome, his goal.
Right.
And so when he realized he's already won just by that exit and not and seeing where he was trying to prove, once he like let go of that proving, he finally felt that pressure lift. That's just one example, but it's the exciting thing is like if if they really get real about what's going on in their leadership and what the impact is on that, that's the misconception. People think they have it figured out. That's the bottom line.
Got it.
It's old adaptations programs I talk about. Like not to be too long tooth here, but I
Yeah.
had a guy doing parts work in his journey, and he called an internal board meeting, and there was his higher self and this younger part of him at the table was a data centered CEO, a gut centered CEO, and then a heart based CEO, and then they were all at odds. The gut CEO was like, I don't, something doesn't feel good here. The data CEO was like, crunch more data, OKRs, more data, more systems, and the CEO that was heart centered had atrophied, wasn't even in the room anymore.
Right.
Everyone's being pushed to create more outputs and more data and OKRs. So he had like called an internal board meeting, and I watched him have this board meeting until there was alignment. And then from that, he said, write this down. I got my purpose. So I literally wrote this down during the journey. He had full alignment with all these parts. And then his purpose statement came out of that. And then sure enough, that Monday, the board removed him from his post as CEO. The company started 16 years ago. And now he's in a different role. It was beautiful. But success was his whole world was taken away from him. So he had to have this whole place of like, who am I now? He didn't know what it was like to have to go interview for jobs and stuff. That was very confronting. So, uh, but but he saw all the parts at odds and how that was driving his leadership, and he was exhausted. He came to me exhausted, ready to give up. He's like, I hate this company.
Yep.
I hate what I've created. And he's like, I don't know what to do. I'm stuck. I'm drained. I'm anxious. I'm depressed. So, so that's what you don't see on the outside for these high performers. You're like, oh, they've got millions. They've got the houses, the cars. So
Yep.
anyway, long answer to your question. I'll just shut up.
No, I just that's amazing, and I followed to that to say that my youth, well, my youth after my 20s, let's put it that way, my 20s has been a roller coaster of grinding until 2 in the morning, trying to build things, working on projects, working for other companies, doing my own thing. It's just been a mixture of a bunch of different things. And I think I ultimately got to the point where, in starting this podcast, I kind of mentioned this to you before as it relates to
Mhm.
staying curious and better understanding myself. Kind of started this as a way to figure out what more there is outside of my bubble and this hustle culture that I've found myself
Yeah.
digging so deep into. And I've always prided myself on the hustle culture until I realized that I wasn't sleeping and my body was falling apart because of it. I was getting hurt more, and
Yeah.
I was trying to work out super hard. I couldn't, and I was so fatigued because I was chugging caffeine in the morning and couldn't sleep at night, and then it was ruining everything. So I got this
Yeah.
vicious cycle of trying to better understand um, what to do next to keep myself going, to keep making the next deal happen, or to try to make the next deal happen. And you kind of mentioned that earlier with sales too, but have found out over the past couple of years that I've got to change something in order for this to be a marathon and not a sprint.
And
So
so what had you take pause and really do that self reflection? Because some people will just keep pushing through that. You're young enough to make it through it and just like, well, I'll just catch up on the weekend and sleep. But you're having those questions with yourself. You just
yeah,
took a pause. Like, how did you get to that place where you actually started asking those questions about yourself?
I think for me it became, is it the money that I'm after, or is there something else, right? I think, is there more than just the money? There's a lot of soul searching that went into this too, and what
Mhm.
I've found as of late, for me, a lot of it is like truly like an ego death of sorts, which maybe sounds a bit dramatic, but truly trying to figure out a way to get past my ego in a lot of these things. And I'm not sure you do.
Make it specific to you. So when you say ego death, like we use that term in psychedelics
Yep.
too, ego death. What is it for you? What part of your ego or what part of you was ready to die or get out of the way or make room for some new sustainable version of you as an entrepreneur?
So being super prideful about my work ethic, I think
Mhm.
specifically, and trying to figure out what that meant, right? Work ethic for me meant you wake up, you do the work, you don't stop until it's done, and you go to sleep super late, because that in and of itself means that you worked all day long and you got a bunch done, you accomplished a bunch of things. I think redefining what like work ethic looks like and what balance looks like and what success looks like is kind of a huge part of that. So I think that was kind of a part of the ego death, was like not having to portray myself in a certain way to people to feel as though what I was doing was mattered, right?
Mhm.
Or actually important. Um,
Yep.
when I took a step back, I quickly realized that these things I was doing were not actually good for me long term, and I can't serve others and support others and find fulfillment in doing that, right? And being there for other people if I can't be there for myself first. And if my
Yeah.
body literally can't do it, I can't do anything for anybody else. I can't build any new tools. I can't sell anything for anybody effectively. I can't build my own business, whatever that may be. I was like, I just can't, I truly can't do it if my body's
Yeah.
falling apart. And
How
a
many
lot of that
people can
manifested
relate
in
to?
like sleep walking and screaming and like I've been doing that my entire life, but it gets so much worse when I am super
Mhm.
stressed. So
Yeah. And then what I look at with people, because we probably won't have time to get into today, but I would
yeah,
start teasing out like, what was driving, what's underneath this push that was happening. Like, oh, I gotta be super productive and get all this stuff done. I gotta
Yep.
keep driving. Like you start teasing that out and find out, well, what is that part of you doing? Why is it working so hard? And when did that first come online? Oh, I'm just making this up, but
Yep.
like for you, when did that first come online? Because I'm sure that's maybe an older friend to you, this performative, get things done, push. Like chances are it wasn't just that moment. It maybe
Yep.
goes back a little longer.
I think I look back to, let's just put it, I guess to get it, put it out there, like the economy was not great to my family and has not always been great to my family. 2008, 2009 was pretty rough. So I think a lot of that stems from a life experience, right? And coming out of that and being like, I need to do these things to be able to be successful and to be able to support. Everything is great now, all things considered. But I think that was kind of one of those life experiences of mine that was a true uh, everything probably stemmed from that to a certain degree.
Yeah.
But what I
That,
found is that I was not very productive when I was getting to that point. I thought I was being productive, taking the Adderall, staying up late, not sleeping, right, doing all those things, working the tech job while also doing political consulting on the side and trying to flip three houses simultaneously. Right? It was never ending because I'm just constantly going crazy doing things, and I was like, this just
yeah,
doesn't seem sustainable long term.
yeah,
And
yeah,
um and I loved it, but I was like, I can't keep up with it personally
yeah,
because truly my body's shutting down. So
yeah,
big turning point for me, which I don't really know how many times I've said that out loud, but that was a good that has helped. This in and of itself is helpful in better understanding and identifying that. And
yeah.
if you're able to do just that for me, I think you can do a lot better for a lot of people. So
Well, it takes self-awareness, right?
yeah,
You're seeing like, okay, this is the version of success I've been adopted, and I'm pushing. I can't push any harder because my
yeah,
body's literally shutting down. And then usually that style of achieving is a survival. It's an adaptation. Like, oh, if I don't do this, there's the financial crisis, and there's a fear that that adaptation is trying to prevent from happening.
yeah,
Either some pain doesn't want you to feel, or the fear of like, I'll be bankrupt, my family won't have money, I'll be on the streets, I'll lose my house. So then it kicks in at the cost of your body and
yeah,
also your mental health. And guess what? When you're in that space, how creative are you? How resourced are you? How patient are you?
yeah.
How strategic are you? Well, you're not. You're in survival mode. You're not sleeping. You're on Adderall. You're crushing coffee. You're in survival mode.
Right.
Just like, and then guess what? Eventually, your body, if you don't slow down, your body will say, I'm done. I'm done with you.
Yeah.
Stop abusing me. I'm just going to shut you down.
It's amazing how hair growth comes back and you don't break out as much and everything gets like this is kind of nice. This is a little better than what that
I,
was.
I was talking to this. I've had so many leaders come here. I had one leader come to me that had this chronic stomach issue and had seen all these specialists, blood work, like quarterly visits to the naturopathic doctor, all this testing,
Yep.
and then did one journey and purged. Not everyone purges. When I say purge, they got well or they threw up.
Yep.
And then after the retreat, that persistent stomach issue that had been there for 10 years was gone. It
Right.
was all emotions based. So if you look at Gabor Mate's book called Healing in a Toxic Culture, it's all about epigenetics, and if you leave trauma untreated, it can become disease, cancer. ADHD is environmental; it's not hereditary. So his book is fascinating. It shows like the cause and effect of unresolved trauma in the body shows up as so they don't ask you when you get cancer, what was your childhood like?
Yep.
What happened 2 years ago when that cancer came on? They're like, oh, here's your chemo protocol. So they start, if you start linking like what happened to you when that cancer came on, oh, my mom died. And then there's some environmental trigger
Right.
and your body was run down because you were like exhausted and the body is like susceptible. So
Yep.
it's a lot of this is emotion based and physical based, and that's the beauty of this work, you know. So good for you for having self awareness and
You
trying to do things
mentioned,
differently.
well, we're working on it, lots of
Yeah,
work to do just in general. But I think you mentioned that ADHD is environmental, um, and sorry, it's environmental and not um,
hereditary.
hereditary.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you stand by that 100%?
This is not this is a view I adopted from Gabor Mate,
Okay.
Healing in a Toxic Culture. He is a uh, world-renowned expert on trauma, Gabor Mate, Mate. There's I can send you a link to YouTube
Yep.
video, but he said it's and I'm gonna take it's my own description of it, but in one of his videos, I saw him talk about a month ago, but he talked about it again. It's like with the younger self, when something happened to you or didn't happen to you, which is trauma, your little brain wasn't fully developed. So for it to be fully developed, it had to do something. It couldn't speak up and say stop. It couldn't set a boundary. It couldn't scream and say enough. It did not support itself. So that part of the brain developed ADHD as a coping mechanism.
Yep.
And so his contention, which I've since adopted, it's his body of work and his research that I'm just repeating. So Gabor
Yep.
Mate has a video. If you look up Gabor Mate and ADHD on YouTube, he'll unpack that to the nth degree. It's in his book too.
I've now had this ADHD conversation with so many people on this podcast and offline too. People who you go to the doctor, and I think this is why this is so important too. Like going into and having a conversation with like a holistic doctor too. I had Dr. Sogol Ash on one of my podcasts as well. I'm not sure if I shared that one with you or not, but that was a really good one because we talked about everything from a holistic approach. But it ultimately felt like she a doctor like that will actually listen to and try to address your issues at a very base level by understanding you first. Whereas nowadays, I go into the doctor. This is not every single doctor, but it seems like a lot of doctors, and it's quick in and out, right? They're trying to better understand who you are, but without a true understanding of your background. And just reading through your paperwork, that's great, but they don't actually know you. And so I
no,
feel like truly getting to know the individual and what's going on in their lives is so necessary before prescribing anything. But
yeah,
nowadays we go in and it's immediately, this is what happened to me. This was 5 years ago. I went in, I said, I can't focus. I've got so much going on. It doesn't seem like anything's getting done. A lot was getting done. I just was just overworked and not efficient. And they were like, oh, you have ADHD. You're like, is that correct? Or is there something else going on here? Why would you just
yeah,
prescribe that immediately, right? This is the kind of stuff that gets podcasts taken down, right? When you start talking about big pharma and pushing drugs.
yeah.
But I'm not saying anything bad about Adderall for certain individuals. I'm just saying that it seems as though that's the case now. And that's one of the
Yeah.
biggest issues we have with our medical system at this point.
Yeah, just give that a look on YouTube,
Yep.
Gabor Mate ADHD. But then I was talking to a client. He just got out of college. He worked for a wealth management firm, and now he's having to take his Series 65.
Yep.
He's got imposter syndrome, and he says, "Oh, I've got ADHD." I said, "Well, tell me about what that means for you, and tell me when you first." Well, when I was younger, I said I couldn't focus in school. And I said, "Well, tell me about what school is like for you." It's like I had a really hard time focusing and taking tests. I said, "Well, what if the school system as it stands now, which is like basically memorize, regurgitate, get good at test taking,
Yep.
what if that's not your style of learning? What if you were more experiential learning, hands-on learning, but you were force-fed this style of learning? But because you can't follow along, now you've got ADHD, and here's some Adderall for you. It's like, or so that's. I mean, he was diagnosed with ADHD because he couldn't concentrate. Because, well, what if it's the system he's in is not supportive of learning? What if he had a hands-on like a Waldorf school? He would thrive in it. Would he still have ADHD? Or is it the system he's in diagnosed him with that? Then that becomes his identity. Oh, I can't focus because I got ADHD. Well,
Yep.
how do you know you have ADHD? Because you can't focus. You see the loop
Vicious
there. It's
cycle.
like,
Yep.
well, what if you said your style of learning is better for hands-on, experiential talking through it? Then, if you did it that way, would you still have it? So just, I mean, again, it's like it's fascinating to unpack it, but it's a really we're quick to throw out terms about depression, anxiety, ADHD. It's really quick to diagnose and then prescribe.
Yeah.
That's the system.
I think
So
it's hard to customize a package for every single kid properly, every single
mhm.
individual, especially as they grow and evolve. And well, especially for males until we're 25, until our prefrontal cortex actually does fully
Yeah,
develop, right?
yep,
So
yep,
I think it's a difficult task, but I think it's something to be discussed is that at a young age, just prescribing drugs is probably not the ideal solution. We should probably figure out creative ways to get certain kinds of individuals into different systems so they can thrive in those different systems. Once again, I have no
yeah,
idea what the answer is to that, but it does not seem
yeah.
like a really good idea just to keep throwing drugs at kids, hoping that it solves the problem or calms them
Well,
down.
it doesn't stop. I've got peers that work with like Navy SEALs,
Yeah.
and as an example, to become a SEAL, it's intense. And they had childhood trauma. Then there's the trauma of being on the front lines for a year, and they're debilitated because they've had to kill people as part of their job. Then they come back home with no band of brothers, with
Yep.
no North Star. They start crushing pills, drinking alcohol, and become depressed, and then they off themselves, like
Yep.
50 suicides a day or something crazy like that. Well, what's the best path forward is like, we're going to give you to the VA, we're going to give you a therapist and these little Prozac pills. Great. Good luck. That's it. So I'm going to medicate myself for the next 30 years. That's my life.
Yep.
So through psychedelics, they've helped heal that PTSD. My friend's retreat center in Mexico, it's miraculous. You get like 80% efficacy for PTSD, where 30% get relief from the current model. So again, it's like diagnosis, pills, and talking about it. Talking
Yep.
about it does not resolve trauma. You got to have it in your body, experience it, and move it from your nervous system. Psychedelics is one tool for that. Breath work is a tool. Somatic therapy, Hakomi therapy, but it has to leave your nervous system and it has to be treated as a whole system. With all the research I've done, and people like Gabor Mate.
Right. You you often say that what looks like strength is often unprocessed survival. Can we talk
Mm-hmm.
about and kind of unpack that just a little bit?
Yeah, let me put that on you. So, like, if you think of some of your strengths as an entrepreneur,
Mhm.
what are some of your strengths?
Um, what are some of my
I'm putting you
strengths?
on the spot.
Yeah, no, yeah, I often, one of my weaknesses, I struggle to talk about myself often. That's another weakness, but especially in these kinds of situations, which having
Because
a podcast with my name on it, you'd think that was not the case.
if you talked about yourself, what would that mean about you?
I think some of my strengths as an entrepreneur, I think I am one of those individuals that is willing to get the job done, kind of at whatever cost to myself, which I consider that a strength in a way because I'm going to communicate properly with everybody involved to make sure that the job does get done properly. And sometimes also, once again, at the cost of my own mental health. But
Mm-hmm.
we can talk about
Yeah.
that another time. I think I'm also very communicative. It's a solid
Mm-hmm.
strength of mine with all parties. I am pretty organized as it relates to work and implementing the right systems for
Mm-hmm.
things to work properly. I would not consider myself the most detail oriented individual across the board. I'm very much so a salesperson in the way that I like to get things done quick.
Sure.
So I've oftentimes referred to myself as a builder, not a manager. I like to build
Mm-hmm.
things, get them done, and
Mm-hmm.
then pass them off to a manager. So I think from a
Mm-hmm.
strength perspective, that's a long-winded way to
Yeah.
answer that and finally get around to a good answer for you. But more than anything, I'm a builder, a doer. The
Yeah.
managing side of things is not necessarily my strong suit, if that
So
makes sense.
as the doer, where you've gotten in trouble because you've overextended yourself, yeah,
Yep.
like not
Yep.
to just to kind of do broad strokes.
Yep.
That doer sometimes gets you in trouble at the cost of your body and your mental health, physical health. Yeah.
Yep.
So that's an adaptation. To answer your question, that's we would explore what's driving that, what's underneath that, what's the fear that is trying to keep from happening, because that driver, that doer, has got a positive intention behind it, but we just
Right.
don't know what it is. But really, it's an automatic reaction based on some fear or pain, or that's that survival mode thing or that adaptation you learned early on. It's a strength, but when not in check, it becomes automatic and it's got a detriment to your overall health. So
Got it.
we would explore that even without medicine to find out what's driving that. Why is it kicking up now? What's afraid is going to happen? Do you feel it in your body? It's like we just explore, like we go on this exploration and go, let's really get Cameron's world.
Right.
Why does Cameron do what he does?
Right.
You know, through inquiry like that. And so that you can learn more about yourself. Then you take that into a psychedelic state or altered state, or through IFS parts work, you
Yep.
can make sense of who you are and become more self-aware and let those patterns relax so that it's not causing you problems.
Ray, do I have to pay you after this session too? Is this
Oh, that's
is
so
there a
fun.
payment link coming at the end? No,
Oh,
this
it's
is
gonna be a
great.
doozy. It's gonna be a doozy.
If
Just
somebody
don't drink
were
that tea in your cup. I put something in it. Just be careful what you drink.
yeah, that's how we've gotten so deep on this already. If somebody were watching this and they were like, okay, I really like what Ray has to offer. I think I want to get involved with him. I want to reach out to him and connect with him, but I ultimately want to do some work myself first, and I want to do some research, and I want to
Mhm.
start kind of moving in that direction. So they're in this middle area, this gray area of like, I want somebody to help me, but I don't. But I'm a little stubborn, and I don't want that just yet.
Yep.
What should they do to kind of put themselves on the right path to prepare
Yep.
themselves to come and work with
Yeah.
you?
Yeah. So what I do with everyone I start with is a 45-minute just complimentary strategy session
Yep.
where I learn more about you,
Yep.
what you're wanting to explore. And then from there, we go multiple different ways. So
Yeah.
it's just really get to know you. I answer all the questions about what I do, how I do it. And then from there, we go to the next step, which could be, hey, I need some time to think about it. Here's some educational materials. Or, hey, I want to do a deeper dive coaching session with you. I call that an executive preview session.
Right.
I'll give you 10 questions. You answer those, and we'll do like a 90-minute call again on me. And that may look like more of a coaching engagement, or I might do psychedelics first. But it starts with a 45-minute conversation again on me. So I
Yep.
want to make sure we're a good fit. And some I've just sent on their way. Like, hey, I'm not the right guy, or there's someone you should talk to. But it starts with that first before I do any uh, recommendations. I like to start with a conversation one on one.
Got it.
Let's roll our sleeves up. What do you really want in your life? What's in the way? And then we go from there. It's very custom for every individual.
Got it.
It's very
Okay.
like I hate to say bespoke, that's so overused, but like it's
Well, I
everyone's
guess you
different.
kind of you mentioned Gabor Mate a number of times. I'm
Mhm.
thinking more so along the lines of if there were certain people that people should start kind of listening to or diving into. Maybe who are some individuals, some other mentors and coaches that you would suggest people start to follow and listen to online and or
Uh,
engage with their work or research in preparation for this.
in the psychedelic space,
Psychedelics, yeah, just in I said the
yeah.
kind of the finding themselves space.
Well, the find themselves. I mean, I come through the lens of like here's one that may be if you've got parents who are emotionally immature, like
Yep.
meaning they never did emotional intelligence, they kind of skipped that chapter of life.
Yep.
They went to school and that was their education, but they didn't do any stuff to become more self-aware. They just get through life and then they raised you and you were raised by emotionally immature parents. There's a book called Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents. That's a great book to see the impact on how that drives your whole life, your relationships, this high achiever thing. Because if they weren't emotionally attuned to you, then you've cut off your feelings and you're living your whole life through external validation. That's a great book. Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents. The author escapes me. Um, there's also a book called The Body Keeps Score that talks about like this whole notion of your body is the place where all this stuff is stored. If unresolved and unchecked, it can cause problems later. So resolve it in the body, be in relation to your body. So The Body Keeps Score is a good book. Then if you want to know like people like Andrew Huberman's got a
Yep.
podcast.
Yep.
He did one on MDMA therapy. He did one on psilocybin, which are two medicines I work with. You've got Tim Ferriss has openly talked about his psychedelic. He's invested $30 million in the space. In fact, Dick Schwartz did an IFS park session with Tim Ferriss about his childhood abuse. And so that's another great podcast. I don't have the episode in front of me, but if you
Yep.
search Tim Ferriss and Dick Schwartz IFS podcast, that'll come up. There's a two-part series. And then, those are some people I would track, like Tim Ferriss. Joe Rogan's talked about it if you like his style of work, but Huberman goes into it in full detail. And then on
Right.
my portal, I've got all this content. Even if you don't work with me, I'd be happy to share my content. It's behind a firewall, so it's all encrypted. But I've got all these things I've curated myself. I've got 16 pieces of content. I've written my own content on the high achiever paradox and what trauma is for high achievers, how it shows up. So I have a bunch of content beyond what I've just mentioned there. And I have a summary for every content piece, the TLDR, just what you need to know. So if that speaks to you, then you can listen to the whole thing.
Love it.
Um, Bruce Lipton on Laura Dawn's podcast, it's a good one. He talks about the subconscious programming, Bruce Lipton and Laura Dawn. It's called Psychedelic Leadership Podcast. It's an older one, but that's again in my portal. Um, Off the top of my head, that's how I'd start. I mean, I've
That's a
got tons of resources, but
Yeah, it's a phenomenal list, and also once again, you have a lot of your own stuff too, which is huge. And I think also I'm gonna be including all of that in the show notes.
cool.
I think there's like um this phase of like creating and building trust, right, with people that want to come work with you. And
Mm-hmm.
it seems to be the case is that those who are like yourself, like you're just brutally honest about where you can go find good information. And I love
Yep.
that. And that makes me personally want to be like, okay, Ray, let's start tomorrow. Like, you know who to go to, there's more outside of just yourself and you're constantly learning
Yep.
and evolving yourself. Do you find yourself constantly, well, in this work too, learning new things that you're implementing consistently on a daily, weekly, monthly basis?
Well, the way that it works is everyone's a mirror. So
Yep.
even your own life, You look at the quality of your friendships, the quality of your relationship. It's all a mirror for your own internal psychology. So your outer world is really a mirror for your inner world.
Right.
So if you don't like your outer world, it's time to re-examine your inner world. So when I sit for people, what ends up happening is either I've already worked through that, I'm currently working on that, or like, oh, that's on my list now, thanks to that client. So I'm constantly seeing mirrors for this high achiever syndrome, this high achiever paradox. It's constantly in my face. So I'm constantly having to look at like all my little patterns. So I constantly do my work, and I'm constantly learning and growing. I go to psychedelic conferences. I was at a psychedelic panel recently. I'm in a group of psychonauts. We're all in the space. We hold space for others. We talk about best practices, harm reduction. So I'm a continual student of this path, and I'm doing my work still. Like I had a somatic therapy session this morning, and I was doing work with my younger parts. Like it's never done because to hold space in a clean way for people, I say clean, energetic, clean way where you're
Right.
not transferring things onto a client, you have to do that deeper work. So I'm constantly going back and doing fine tuning because I have to in this space to keep it clear for my clients to like relax into.
Right.
If I get tripped up because someone has mommy issues, I'm like, oh shit, and I start shutting down. How good am I for that client?
Yep.
So it's, for me to do this work with integrity, I have to keep doing my deep work,
Actually,
in between.
that's got to be one of the most difficult parts is just in listening to people's trauma and what they've experienced in general and
Yeah.
digesting it, um, and consistently being able to provide quality output and quality responses and engaging with them in a productive manner has got to be very well. It would be very difficult for the average individual. So I say this: the therapist side of all of this and the listening side of this is so huge and important, and super commendable because not many people can actually do that without once again going into their own trauma and connecting with their own issues,
Yeah.
and then shutting down personally. So that
Yeah,
thing's
and, and
amazing.
sometimes it's not even like major traumas. It's like there are these relational patterns. There's these things they just do. They think it's themselves.
Right.
But we start teasing apart and go, oh, what if I was just not performing all the time? What if I was not leading the charge? What if I was, so it doesn't even a trauma. It's how you relate with the world and yourself that gets in the way of what you want. So it's
Right.
even unhooking from quote unquote the matrix.
Have you had anybody had a bad trip at this point? Like a
A
real
bad trip. Yeah.
like a really bad
Um,
experience. And I'm sure you can't, well, you won't share names and things, but I'm just thinking to
yeah.
myself, was there an experience where you were like, wow, this is just not for this person at all after the trip?
Never a bad trip.
Okay.
When I've done public talks on it, I got invited to an EO group with like 8 CEOs, and they're like, "Okay, I heard a bad trip." And usually the bad trips come like in a concert. Someone gave me a handful of mushrooms, didn't know how much it was, what kind they were, just gobbled, and all of a sudden they're tripping out, and there's 1,000 people there. They're like, "Oh my gosh, bad trip."
Right.
Uh, because I do vetting,
Yeah.
I don't take people that they're just coming off of like a lot of antidepressants. I really vet and stay in my lane of the high achiever that are wanting to optimize, fine tune. If they have a lot of trauma,
Yeah.
that's out of my skill set. And I have people that do that. Because I vet so heavily up front, make sure there's alignment. And I have people that support people that need deeper support that may
Right.
have deep sexual trauma or physical abuse. There's been some really, really dark stuff that's happened. That's important to do with someone who's who's trained for trauma and sexual abuse. So I just refer them out. So because I vet people, I screen people, educate people, and don't work with everyone, and I get medicine from the right place. What I will say, I haven't had a difficult experience. I haven't had a bad trip, but I've had difficult experiences.
Yeah.
And one example is this younger entrepreneur. He got so stuck in his mental looping that it was unbearable. And I'm like, that's your world. His mind was his way that he delivered value to the world. And he was seeing his pattern so loudly, he didn't like himself. He's like, and I didn't want to see this anymore. I want to turn it off. And he couldn't turn it off. So he was like bummed out because he couldn't shut that off. Like it just shows you your internal landscape. And sometimes people don't like to see that. So they're having a difficult experience.
Right.
One time I had a woman within the first half hour or 15 minutes, she's like, oh my God, I'm here alone. Where's my friends? I'm like, you okay? She's like, I'm freaking out. Like, I'm scared. I'm like, do you not trust me? And something about me. She's like, no, but we should probably call one of my friends. I'm like, we shouldn't call a friend, but why don't we do some reading together? So I taught her how to regulate her nervous system, to breathe, her vagus nerve, to stimulate that. Within 10 minutes, she was giggling and laughing. She lay back down. She's all good. So difficult experiences, yes. Can bad trips happen? Sure. But that's because you're not screening people properly for
Right.
mental health or what drugs they're taking, prescription drugs. So if you're careful about the vetting process, harm reduction, education, what you're doing, why you're doing it, if you do all of that, this is safer than, I mean, this is going to sound, I've got to be careful. Like David Nutt did a study in the UK on drugs and their effects on humans and
Yeah.
addiction qualities of them. He got fired for this commission study he did by the UK government. He said that LSD is safer than drinking alcohol. Like, what are you kidding me? Well, if you look at the impact on the body, the long-term health effects that alcohol has, or nicotine, or actually tobacco, not nicotine, tobacco and alcohol have in your system, LSD actually is better. It's healthier for you. It's less harmful to your body than tobacco or alcohol. So if done safely, the risks are very, very low that you'll have a bad trip.
Right.
Not to say you can't have them. Some people have a spiritual crisis, but it happens on occasion. But I haven't had it under my care, and I've been doing this 20 years, and I never had a quote unquote a bad trip. I've had very uncomfortable experiences where I've purged and been on my hands and knees crying, saying, "Please get me out of here,"
Right.
but never something I couldn't handle.
I don't. You talked about like spiritual searching earlier. I think a lot of people that have this, there's just like weird stigma around. Well, not weird. There's a stigma around psychedelics because of obviously psychedelics being used for people to trip and at concerts and to have a good experience and a fun time, not using it to heal necessarily. And
Mm-hmm.
I've had a lot of these conversations as of late as it relates to healing and using psychedelics for healing specifically, but people find it hard to like disconnect between the two.
Mm-hmm.
And the utilization of obviously psychedelics for healing purposes. A lot of that has been around treating PTSD. I had a conversation with Jonathan Lubecki about that on one of my podcasts. Obviously talked about it with Patricia as well. Now I'm talking to you. It seems to be one of those things that's picking up and as it relates to being an okay or being normalized in society nowadays. Or being okay with people utilizing to treat their trauma. I've never really understood why it's not okay for people to treat their trauma or to treat themselves or to find themselves with some kind of drug as long as it's under the proper supervision. And I
Yeah,
think people are becoming more understanding of that nowadays. It's just
yeah,
taking time. But you talked about spiritual, like diving deep into yourself and trying to find yourself spiritually and going to hell and back.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
that is something that I think this space is ripe for helping people to better understand themselves and to
Mm.
do that spiritual deep dive, whereas a lot of people just don't care to do a spiritual deep dive at all.
Yeah, yeah. It's not for everyone. In fact, like you can go deep and learn more about yourself without using any kind. I have people that do breath work, and that's the same thing. I mean, if you do holotropic breath work, you can tap into DMT in your pituitary gland.
Yep.
You can have an altered state from that. Some people get it through meditation. Psychedelics is one tool that's helped to work for me.
Right.
But yeah, it's not for everyone. It's not the panacea. It's not the end all be all. And guess what? Like in Michael Pollan's Netflix series or his book, How to Change Your Mind, he said when you do a journey, you open up a door that you didn't see was there. You go up an escalator, you take it. Well, that just gets you that next level. You may have to go back more than one time. It's not just a one and done thing. It hasn't been for me because you're a complex human and you've got things locked in your memory bank. So it's not like a one and done, all good. You may not come back for a year, but if you want to continually grow and evolve, it may be a path you choose to pursue with the proper support and guidance. And it's not about so much about this work. It's the preparation, it's the integration, it's the journey itself. It's like a three-legged stool. You
Right.
just go keep doing journeys every month. I heard people go do ayahuasca every month. I'm like, really? Like, are you really integrating that? You're chasing the psychological high and you're not doing the deep inner work. You're just chasing the medicine high.
Right.
Say people that go to Anthony Robbins workshops every 3 months, like they're chasing that emotional high, but they're not doing the deep inner work, which is a complement to the. So it's a tool like anything. Coaching's a tool, psychedelics are a tool, IFS is a tool, breathwork's a tool. It's a tool when used properly can be an accelerant to your personal growth, to your spiritual path, to help you see the matrix more clearly and go, do I want to stay in the matrix or is there another way?
Which pill am I
That's the way I
taking?
look
Red or blue?
at it. The red pill or the blue pill? Do I stay happy, numb, and dumb with my head in the sand or take the red pill, which I may not like what I'm seeing, but I'm taking the red pill. So the psychedelics are the red pill.
I love it. So I really appreciate your time tonight. There's I feel like this conversation could, and hopefully at some point in the future we'll come back around to this and we'll keep diving deep into these things. Especially I know you're doing a lot of work right now on your, you mentioned avatar, your branding, everything else
Yep.
too.
Yeah.
So how would you like to conclude this today? I know I want to, everybody will have all of your information in the description of the show. So all that will
Mm-hmm.
be there. But aside from those links and all that fun stuff, what else have we maybe not hit on that you'd like to share?
Well, let me think about that. Uh, to me, I'd like to share it's like the opportunity for every person that's listening out there, entrepreneur, startup founder, leader. It's just about starting to listen to yourself more closely and stop, redefining what success looks like. Let's start with like, what is success for me, and is it chasing this never-ending goalpost, or what is success, and do I have meaning in my life? Start the question there. What is it that's working in my life? What's not? And is my life about chasing success, or is there a deeper meaning? And if not, be in that question. Like, what is my definition of success? What it would give me more meaning versus just these external goalposts I keep chasing with like relentless pursuit, but they don't give me that deeper, fulfilling meaning to it. So I offer people this new paradigm about finding more meaning in the work you do, with the way you lead, becoming more of your true nature, your true self, authenticity, like redefining leadership, especially with AI coming online. Leadership skills can be outsourced to AI. But what can't be is, at least now, is soft skills, your resiliency, your emotional intelligence. With AI, like a leader is going to have to be a whole new emotionally intelligent, self-aware being. And this is a path that'll help you get there because everything else can be outsourced in leadership with a new AI coming online. Like I'm hearing examples of it. So become a better, more resilient leader by doing your inner work, and your outer work will reflect that. So that's the invitation for people that feel called. Like, let's explore what that would look like for you, what more meaning would look like, what your diversion of success would look like. That's like how I would like to leave it.
I love it. Well, Ray, I once again, I really appreciate the time tonight. I would love to do a follow-up episode at some point in the future. I know that you've got a lot going on, but at some point in the next 25 to 30 episodes, we definitely need to have you back on to dive deeper into these topics and to share more with followers. I'm sure they'll have lots of comments and questions here soon. But once again, I really appreciate it. I've been able to kind of dive deeper throughout this episode specifically and think more about what truly affects me on a daily basis, and also better understand what maybe my direction is or the reason as to why I do certain things. So it's been super helpful in that regard. Whether or not we meant for this to be a session or not, it has been very helpful in that regard, and I hope it does the same for a lot of people that are listening. And I'm sure it
Yeah.
will. But once again, all of your information will be dropped below in the show notes, so people will be able to get directly in touch with you
Right.
and be able to follow you soon as well. Did you mention, we don't have to mention this at all, did you mention there might be a book on the way? There's some other things going on?
Yeah, I'm still messing with the title,
Okay.
but the current, I think I wrote it down here. The current title is The Silent Void: Why High Achievers Feel Empty and What Every High Achiever Must Face to Feel More Fulfilled. So I'm still mucking with the title, but
Okay.
basically, we're sitting with like at least 70 people. I know what they're wanting, and then I have 20 plus pages of testimonials, and I do all this coaching in between. I've been immersed in all things high achiever,
Right.
and I want to share like this new paradigm for leadership that's self-led. It's more from wholeness, not from survival and adaptations, and just share the stories of all these leaders who have seen another path forward. So I want to share all that I've learned from working with these really magnificent people, everything from Division I basketball coaches, professional athletes.
Right.
I want to share what I've learned and help other people see a new way of leading themselves and others, their company, that's more sustainable, that's more enjoyable, that gives them more peace and meaning and more emotional freedom. So that's
Right.
it's. I'm still flushing it out, but I've got a model I've built, a coaching model, and I'm going to walk people through how I do what I do, who I do it with, and share a bunch of client journeys along the way with different names under pseudonyms and stuff. I won't out people, but that's the book I'm in the process of writing now.
I love it. Well, I am interested and curious to see what this turns into.
Yeah.
And we will obviously, as always, we'll stay curious and we'll continue to learn and continue to grow and continue to be properly. I always say it's like properly vulnerable, so that we
Yeah.
can continue to grow.
Yeah.
Vulnerability is one of those weird, interesting things too, where I feel like you can be maybe a little bit too vulnerable sometimes in the wrong situations, but being properly vulnerable with the right people to grow is super important. Um,
Yeah, and there's also different shades of vulnerability. It's
yeah,
not sharing like, oh, as a 5 year old, like what the there's ways you can be vulnerable, like, hey, I don't have the answers.
right.
I'm the leader, I don't have the answers, but I want to find out. I need your help. Like that's vulnerable versus sharing like, oh, at 5 years old, this happened to me. So there's ways to be real and vulnerable in your leadership that don't require, all the skeletons your closet to be under if it's like a different context. But vulnerability really is a strength in leadership. I see it time and time again. When they act like they have it all together, it backfires every single time.
Yeah.
So don't mind that chopper. Um, but yeah, that's it. So I appreciate your curiosity tonight and your vulnerability and your shares and your openness and for having me on this show. It's been a pleasure.
Awesome. Well, Ray, we will talk very soon. Thank you again.
Cool.